But first, shall we hear from the star of the TV show? It's Toby Jones, who appeared on our sister radio station, Virgin Radio UK, on the Graham Norton radio show with Waitrose. Here it is.
I think I'm right. All the money they were forced to pay back that they hadn't actually taken, they've never got that back.
No.
So,
well, I think it doesn't in the show. She goes, "What? So where is that 30 grand? Where is it? You know, if it didn't exist,
yeah,
and I've paid it back, where's it gone?
Yeah,
who has it? You know,
and also you kind of think 30 grand. If you're just somebody working in a post office to suddenly kind of go, oh, you owe us £30,000
or 100 or something.
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, people lost houses and
yeah, and I think also the justice thing is interesting. I'm married to a barrister, and she says this is often the case that people they come in with this belief that if they can tell the truth, there's this fundamental belief in British justice that if I can just tell the truth, I'll be able to represent myself. I don't really need help. And you see that happening, that what happens if you do that in this show as well. Yeah. And that's a huge sort of like sadness about people's faith in justice, really.
Yeah, but except it does sort of come around in what do they call it? An affront to justice or something, a legal thing I've never heard before. Yeah. Where they kind of said, well, hopefully the whole thing has a happy... I mean, the show does have a happy ending, but hopefully in real life it then goes on to have an even happier one.
I really believe it will do eventually. It's just taken far too long.
Toby Jones there with Graham Norton on our sister station, Virgin Radio UK. But I'll tell you something, why does it take a television series to bring this? We've known about this, but it's now the TV series which has put it back into the public sphere again, and it's at this moment that I think we can see proper compensation for those people over time. 20 years of pain and agony, and some of those people have not just retired, they've retired poor, or some of them have passed away and won't ever see this justice. So we'll talk to the Sutton and Cheam MP, Paul Scully, because he's a former Postal Affairs Minister. He says, I don't think that government can do enough, and they certainly can't do it quickly enough for those who've been pummeled by the state-owned institution. The Post Office has already paid out £17.5 million in compensation for the prosecutions that it brought and which have been overturned. And Paul Scully's on the show now. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Johnny. Good to speak to you.
Good to speak to you. Now, the inquiry began in September 2020, and last week it was reported that the inquiry had produced enough evidence for police to investigate the senior Post Office staff. Paul, what are the next steps, and when will we finally see justice for all those poor, small business people, some of whom have been fighting these injustices with hands tied behind their backs for 20 years?
Absolutely. Well, the short answer to your question about when it ends, the present Postal Affairs Minister, Kevin Holland, is supposed to get as much, if not all of the money out of the door by August this year, so still another 8 months to go. The inquiry, I set up that inquiry when I was Postal Affairs Minister, and I originally had it non-statutory, so it basically doesn't need a judge at the head of it, because I wanted it to go through quickly to get those answers. It soon became apparent it was so technical, it was so egregious that we needed that detail. Yes. But it has gone on and on. What's interesting, what you said, Johnny, though, about the fact that it's taken that TV programme, was even when I was looking at this after the court case, I was the Postal Affairs Minister that Alan Bates wrote to right in the last scene of the programme. But it was just something, everybody knew something had happened, but because it was like over 20 years, no one really knew the detail. It's like a frog in boiling water catching up with you, warming up. So, but now it's in 4-hour excellent drama series for everybody to see exactly what happened.
Now, the sadness is for some of these victims, they would have been in their mid-50s when this started, and they'll have been either long retired and in poverty in older age or have passed away. So there are some significant victims of this who won't actually ever see justice.
Absolutely. I mean, you saw one man in the series committed suicide. There are people, as you say, who have died subsequently that won't see justice. Lee Castleton, that was in the programme, played by Will Mellors, his daughter suffered eating disorders and bullying at school, as have a number of these people. Some have left the country, not even just their villages, but left the country. Fear of shame through this. So we've got to get this down.
So the word is Fujitsu here. This is the system that had the bugs in it. Where is the blame going to fall? Is it going to blame? Is the fall going to blame on the the technicians and the chief execs and all the kind of management board of Fujitsu, or will it be the preserve of the post office management?
Well, I think there'll be, the inquiry when it goes through, I suspect it needs to go through that work and do that detail, but I suspect it will be shared because Fujitsu clearly have built a faulty system and the post office management did nothing to exactly be open and in fact they did the opposite. They tried to outspend the postmasters. They said they were the ones, the post office were the ones that saying you're the only one affected by this, knowing that just wasn't true. But it shouldn't be for the British taxpayer to be the only people on the hook for that compensation that absolutely desperately needs to be paid. Fujitsu and others need to step up and put their hands in the pockets as well. But that will come, I think, at the end of the inquiry.
Yeah, because it can't be up to us, the taxpayer, to be paying these compensations. I mean, we're also blameless in this, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we've all got to take responsibility for that. And if government is found wanting in this, then that's fine by me. We need to get those answers, those questions answered, and people, including ministers and others, need to take responsibility. But that's for that inquiry to really unpick.
Yes. Adam, in terms of sanction, Adam has texted us, Paul. Adam says, tell Paul that MPs have known about the post office scandal for a long time, and it's taken this television programme, as I mentioned, for them to do anything, or well, not for you, but for it to be brought into the public sphere again. Will pensions be revoked, knighthoods and people involved be taken to court? I mean, it's not just about restoring the life and finances back to those victims, but it's also about punishing the people, not just the institutions and the corporations involved. Are we going to see knighthoods revoked? We're not, are we? People are going to get away with this stuff, aren't they?
No, I don't know. I mean, I've already said that I think Paula Reynolds, the then chief executive of the post office, who subsequently got a CBE for her work and bonuses as well for profit that was not there. Basically, we know that the post office would almost be bankrupt if it would have to pay out the compensation itself.
Yes.
So that does need to be unpicked. But I think, to be fair, I think what we need to do is get that inquiry finished before those actions take place, before that accountability really takes place, because we want to have all of the information rather than trying to deal with half of it. What the TV programme has done is brought it all into sharp focus, but there are a lot of people who have been working on it for the last 2 years since the end of that court case.
The sadness here is that postmasters have claimed that senior post office staff knew about the problems in the Fujitsu system and shut their eyes to them. It's also emerging that a series of government ministers did much the same, and so you tweeted that watching this debate versus the post office has been so difficult but also exhilarating that it's now properly in the public eye. But these stories move along so quickly, Paul, so you've got kind of a week to fix this, haven't you, before it kind of goes away again?
Well, absolutely, in the public eye, but it's clearly not going to go away from the thousands of postmasters who lost financially and the hundreds of postmasters who were prosecuted, as we've been discussing. I'm glad the Prime Minister is now talking about how we can just have a blanket coverage of quashing the convictions of the 700 odd people, because they're not going to want to go to court to face that court of appeal again. What I've always said when I was minister at the time, I said, look, I can give everybody warm words, but that's so the opposite of what we needed. We need warm actions. We need clear actions, because these people have been let down by people like me, people in authority. So it's not about words. It's about doing now and reversing the situation for them.
Now, the Post Office already paid out £17.5 million in compensation for the prosecutions that it brought and which have been overturned. Paul, where has that money been divvied up? Who's it gone to?
So, quickly, I can't give you the exact figures because
I don't need a balance sheet, but kind of
not close enough. I was close enough to it, but there's three compensation strands, if you like.
Yes.
So there were people that lost out financially that weren't convicted. So they ran a what they call a historic shortfall scheme. A little bit like a PPI type thing. They put out an advert to postmasters saying, have you been affected by this? Apply, and you can apply for compensation. There were other people that were convicted that once they get their convictions quashed, because you can't pay compensation out legally to someone with a conviction, then they can apply for compensation there. People like Joe Hamilton, that was featured very heavily in the show, went through that scheme. And then there's the 555 themselves. The people that were the 555 people in that group litigation court case, they've actually been disadvantaged by this because they won some compensation, but most of it went on legal fees and their funders. So they got next to nothing out of it. But because it was full and final settlement, they were said, sorry, that's your lot. So what we've then done is reopen that. So there's a variety of those payments have gone out, and Kevin Hollenrake, the current minister, said he wants to get it done by August this year. Still too long, but we need to. But it is complex.
Yeah, let's fix this. And when they're divvying out awards at BAFTA, I mean, they need to. I mean, apart from it being an excellently acted show with some great actors there, led by Toby Jones and Monica Dolan. If it won a BAFTA on stage, and it would be a great opportunity to make a speech and keep it in the public eye, you'd back them for a BAFTA, wouldn't you? Irrespective of what else is out there in the thespian marketplace, right?
Yeah, it was a brilliant show. It was well written. The performances were brilliant. I keep saying the fact that he said at the beginning of every episode, this is a true story. It was so full on and so amazing that this could actually happen. You sort of needed that at every advert break because it would just remind yourself this was actually happening. But no, they deserve all the plaudits and praise for an amazing drama series that really brought the miscarriage of justice home.
And there are going to be lessons learned here. I mean, this won't ever be repeated in quite the same way, but there is a lesson in public sector bashing the little man. You know, we're seeing a lot of injustice out there, a lot of subterranean injustice, a lot of clumsy decisions, a lot of private enterprises being crushed here because of the bullying that's going on in these unaccountable public sector organisations punishing the little man. It's just, we can't have this.
It's any big institution, whether it's government, whether it's a government-sponsored body, whether it's in sometimes private companies, but you get that groupthink. It's all about the reputation of the brand of the company, rather than forget it. You rightly say about the human costs. You know, I've always tackled, this is the one area when I was minister through COVID, looking at businesses and technology afterwards. This is the one thing that's really kept me awake at night. And it's human first, politician second. You cannot fail to act when you actually see the human cost of this. But that gets lost in these big corporations and these big institutions. And we do need to learn the lesson of that and be a little bit more human about the way we go about our business.
Is there merit in you writing a story about this? I mean, writing in the papers or even writing a book about this, Paul? This is something that when you took on your political career, I'm sure you didn't expect, such a major and important domestic issue to be, in your inbox like this. Paul, this has defined your career as a member of Parliament, hasn't it, in many ways?
Well, look, this is the single thing that I'm going to be most proud about having unlocked. I haven't finished it, clearly. I was moved out of the department before, but unlocked and moved to the next stage. There's a guy called Nick Wallace, an excellent journalist that's been working on this. It's almost his life's work. He's written a book called The Great Post Office Scandal about it. He's done several podcasts and articles about it. I'll be writing a little bit more about it as well. I'm doing a lot of media coverage. One, it's not about me. It's not about my legacy or footnote, but it's about keeping it in the public eye and getting those lessons learned. But most importantly, getting that compensation to people. That's what I want to spend the next few weeks and months doing. Now I'm back on the back benches.
Indeed. Paul Scully, Tory MP for Sutton and Cheam and a former Postal Affairs Minister in the heart of the storm, the impact of the Horizon IT scandal. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.